I didn't know his name. He just sat on the same bench every Thursday at 3 p.m. His uniform told a story his lips never did. Until one day, he finally looked up and said 5 words that changed my life forever. You keep showing up. Why? If you've ever believed that love can find you in the most unexpected places, this story will stay with you. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. It helps more people find these stories that speak straight from the heart. I've always lived in the kind of small town where everyone knows your name, your business, and what color socks you wore to church last Sunday. It's quiet here, slower than most places, and honestly, I've always liked it that way. I work at a little bookshop tucked between a bakery and a florist, just down the street from the train station. It's not fancy, but it smells like old pages and fresh coffee, and that's more than enough for me. Every Thursday, I leave work a little early to head to the station. My sister, Mia, comes in on the 3 p.m. train from the city. It's our thing. She steps off the train. We grab coffee from the cart outside and catch up like we're still sharing a bedroom instead of living in 2 different worlds. But this story isn't about Mia. It's about someone else, someone I didn't expect. The first time I noticed him, I was early. The platform was nearly empty, except for a man sitting alone on the wooden bench under the schedule board. He was wearing a military jacket, stiff and worn at the edges, and his left hand trembled slightly as he held a paper cup. He didn't look up when I walked past, just stared at the tracks like they owed him an answer. He was there the next Thursday, too. Same spot, same silence, and again the week after that. We never spoke. I wasn't even sure if he saw me, but something about him felt heavy, like he was carrying more than just a backpack. I didn't know his name, didn't know his story, but somehow I started looking for him before I looked for Mia. That's when everything slowly began to change. I never meant to get curious about him, not really, but the more I saw him, the more I noticed the little things. The limp in his walk, the way his shoulders stayed tense even when he was sitting. He always wore the same green military jacket, a little too big for him, with a patch on the sleeve that had faded over time. His hair was a mess, like he didn't care or had just forgotten how to care. There was a sadness around him, the kind that doesn't shout. It just lingers in the air like cold wind. He never looked at anyone, never spoke, just sat on that bench every Thursday at the exact same time, sipping from a coffee cup that probably wasn't even warm anymore. People in town started talking. That's what small towns do. I heard whispers at the bakery, at the diner, even from customers in the bookshop. That's the soldier who came back last fall. Poor thing. Doesn't talk to nobody. They say he saw his best friend die over there. No one really knew, of course. They were just filling in the blanks. But what struck me most wasn't the mystery. It was the fact that he always came back. Every Thursday, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. I started bringing a book with me, pretending to read while really watching him from the corner of my eye. And the strangest thing happened. He started noticing me too. At first, just a glance, then a nod. Not much, but in his world, I guess it meant something. I didn't know it yet, but the girl who waited for her sister was slowly becoming the girl who waited for him. It was the kind of Thursday that makes you want to stay in bed, gray skies, wind biting at your cheeks, and the kind of rain that doesn't pour but just soaks everything quietly. I almost didn't go to the station that day. Mia had texted earlier saying she couldn't make it, but something pulled me there anyway. Maybe routine, maybe something else. He was there, of course, no umbrella, just sitting on that same bench, rain dripping from the edge of his jacket. He looked smaller that day, like the weight on him had grown heavier in the storm. I had an extra umbrella in my bag, a silly polka-dotted one I kept forgetting to throw away. I hesitated, then walked over, held it out without a word. He didn't take it. He just looked up at me, really looked, for the first time. His eyes were the color of slate, tired and guarded, like he hadn't let anyone that close in years. "I'm fine," he said, voice low and rough like gravel. But then, almost as if regretting it, he added, "Thank you." It was only 2 words, but they meant everything. The next Thursday, he surprised me. As I walked toward the bench, he stood up, just for a second, reached into his coat and held out the same polka-dotted umbrella, clean, dry, folded neatly. "You forgot this," he said, barely meeting my eyes. I smiled. "I didn't forget. I left it." He looked down, smirked just a little, and said nothing more. That was it, our first real moment. No grand gesture, no dramatic music, just a girl with an umbrella and a man who finally spoke. And in a strange way, that tiny exchange meant more to me than I could explain. From that day on, things started to shift, just a little at a time. We still didn't talk much, but now, when I sat down on my usual bench near his, he'd give a small nod, and I'd nod back. We were like 2 strangers who had silently agreed to not be strangers anymore. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. I was early, sitting with my book as usual, when he walked over, slow, cautious, and sat on my bench instead of his. "Why do you keep coming here?" he asked, without looking at me. His voice was still raspy, but quieter this time. Not harsh, just tired. I blinked, surprised, then smiled. "I could ask you the same thing." He chuckled under his breath. It was dry, but real, a sound that felt like it hadn't come out of him in a long time. "I guess I'm waiting for something," he said, "or trying to remember what I came back for." That was the beginning of our first real conversation. It wasn't long. He wasn't the kind of man who gave away too much, but he told me a little about where he'd been: a desert base, long nights, lost friends, silence that didn't stop, even after he came home. "I didn't lose a leg," he said, "but sometimes I think I left my soul out there." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't try to fix it or fill the silence. I just sat there, and maybe that was the exact thing he needed. That day, something changed. I wasn't just the girl who waited at the station. I was someone he let into the quiet place he'd been hiding, someone who stayed long enough to be seen. After that first real conversation, something unspoken grew between us. We didn't make plans. We didn't exchange phone numbers. But every Thursday, we both showed up. It was like a quiet promise neither of us had to say out loud. He started sitting next to me by default, no longer a bench between us, and our talks slowly got longer, softer, more personal. I learned his name, Liam. He used to love motorcycles and worked on engines before the Army. He had a younger brother who didn't talk to him anymore, and he loved old jazz, though he pretended not to care when I teased him for it. He never gave away too much at once. Every story came out in pieces, like he was carefully stitching something back together. His trust, maybe. His memory of feeling safe. I started bringing books to lend him. He didn't say thank you, but he always returned them, sometimes with a small note tucked inside. "This one made me cry," he once wrote on a sticky note, and I smiled at that all day. He gave me things too, small tokens: a worn military coin, a broken compass, a smooth stone from the desert. He said they were just things, but I kept them like they were treasure, because to me, they were. I could see it in his eyes. He was still broken in places. But each week, his smile came a little quicker, his laugh a little easier. And me? I didn't even realize it. But I had started waiting for Thursdays like they were Christmas. What we had wasn't quite friendship, not yet love. But it was something rare, something that grows quietly between two people who never meant to change each other, but do anyway. Then came the Thursday. He didn't show up. I got to the station early like always, book in hand, heart a little too hopeful. But the bench was empty. I waited and waited. Every train rolled in, then out again, but he never came. At first, I tried to tell myself he was just late. Maybe something came up. Maybe he was sick. But when the clock struck 4 and then 5, my chest felt like it had caved in. The next Thursday, I came again, and the one after that. Still no Liam. On the third week, just when I'd started to feel the sting of real panic, he finally showed up. But he wasn't the same. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Beard longer, eyes darker, and that wall, the one he'd been slowly tearing down, was suddenly back up, stronger than ever. He didn't sit next to me, just stood near the bench, like he wasn't sure if he deserved to anymore. I had to disappear, he said quietly. Sometimes I fall into places I can't climb out of right away. I nodded, unsure what to say. Then he added, I don't think people like me are meant to find peace. Not after the things we've done. Not after the things I've seen. His voice cracked at the end, and my heart ached. I looked at him, really looked, and said, maybe peace doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe it just means learning how to breathe again. He didn't respond, but he sat down, right beside me. We didn't talk much that day, but I stayed, and he didn't leave. And somehow, that silence said everything. Even broken things still deserve to be held. And on that bench, I held space for him. The following week felt different from the moment I saw him. Liam looked lighter, not fixed, not fully okay, but like he'd made some kind of decision. He was early, waiting on the bench when I arrived, holding something small in his hands. I sat beside him like always. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the folded paper between his fingers. I wrote you something, he said finally, eyes still down, in case I don't come back next week. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He shook his head. I'm not saying goodbye. I might need time. Real time. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Away from here. He placed the letter gently in my hand. It was sealed, his name written across it in small, careful handwriting. I haven't given this to anyone before, he said. But you stayed. When I didn't ask you to. When I didn't deserve it. I swallowed hard, my fingers trembling as I held the letter. I won't open it, I whispered. Not unless you really don't come back. His eyes finally met mine, and for a moment I saw the man beneath the weight. The boy he used to be. The hope he was trying to find again. He didn't say anything else that day. Just sat with me, shoulder to shoulder, while trains came and went. When he stood up to leave, he paused, then leaned in and said, Thank you for seeing me. I nodded, unable to speak. That night, I placed the letter in my dresser drawer, still sealed, still waiting, and somehow, not knowing what it said, made me hope even harder that I'd never have to read it. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Every Thursday, I went to the station. I didn't stop. I brought my book, sat on our bench, and kept hoping. Some people said I was wasting my time. He's gone, sweetheart, an older woman once whispered, as if kindness came with warnings. But I knew better. On the fourth Thursday, I was about to leave. The last train had come and gone. The sky was turning gold, and then I heard footsteps. I turned, and there he was. Liam, hair trimmed, face clean. Same jacket, but it looked different now, like it had purpose again. He gave a crooked smile. Still waiting? I couldn't help it. I laughed. Of course, you gave me a letter I never wanted to read. He sat beside me, exhaled slow, like it was the first real breath he'd taken in weeks. I went to a place up north. Veterans retreat, just trees, silence, and people who get it. I nodded, eyes misty. Did it help? He looked at me and said, Yeah, but this, being here with you, this helped more. That day, I knew he wasn't running anymore. He was choosing to stay. And for the first time, so was I. After that day, Liam never missed another Thursday. But something had changed. Not just in him, but between us. We didn't just meet at the bench anymore. We started walking together after the train left. Sometimes to the coffee shop, sometimes just around town. Small steps, simple moments, but they felt sacred. He started smiling more, laughing at little things. He even teased me once for how I always dog-eared my books instead of using a bookmark. That's when I knew we were healing together. He still had his bad days. There were mornings when the weight returned to his eyes, when silence felt heavier than words. But now he let me in. He didn't carry it all alone anymore. One Thursday, he reached out and held my hand. No words, just warmth and trust. I didn't pull away. I didn't need to. That's the thing about broken people. We don't need fixing. We need someone to sit with us, to see us, to stay. And in the quiet rhythm of train whistles and shared coffee, we began writing something new. Not a perfect love story, but a true one. And in its own slow, beautiful way, it saved us both. After that day, Liam never missed another Thursday. But something had changed. Not just in him, but between us. We didn't just meet at the bench anymore. We started walking together after the train left, sometimes to the coffee shop, sometimes just around town. Small steps, simple moments, but they felt sacred. He started smiling more, laughing at little things. He even teased me once for how I always dog-eared my books instead of using a bookmark. That's when I knew we were healing together. He still had his bad days. There were mornings when the weight returned to his eyes, when silence felt heavier than words. But now, he let me in. He didn't carry it all alone anymore. One Thursday, he reached out and held my hand. No words, just warmth and trust. I didn't pull away. I didn't need to. That's the thing about broken people. We don't need fixing. We need someone to sit with us, to see us, to stay. And in the quiet rhythm of train whistles and shared coffee, we began writing something new, not a perfect love story, but a true one. And in its own slow, beautiful way, it saved us both. If you had told me months ago that a quiet soldier on a bench would change my life, I wouldn't have believed you. I was just the girl who waited at the train station, week after week for my sister, for the routine, for something simple. But then Liam sat down, and everything I thought I knew about waiting changed. Now, the station means something different. It's where I learned that healing doesn't always look like therapy rooms or grand gestures. Sometimes it's coffee and paper cups, a shared silence, a second glance, a returned umbrella. Liam still struggles. I do too in different ways, but we've learned how to show up for each other. Not just on Thursdays, but every day in between. People in town stopped whispering. Now they smile when they see us walking together. Some still ask how we met, and I just say, at the bench, I was waiting. But the truth is, I wasn't waiting for a train. I was waiting for him. And he, whether he knew it or not, was waiting for someone to sit beside him and stay. Now, we both do. And that's where our story really begins. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever waited for someone without knowing if they'd come back? I'd love to hear your story. Love letter.